Welcome to the Wednesday feature, which I am renaming to Ask Uncle Lee, because people started calling me Uncle Lee, so it makes more sense. All right, so let's get into the questions. Welcome to my channel. You are entering the world of magic and mysticism with your host, Lee W. Johnson. Keep the lights on and help improve the channel by becoming a supporter for just $2.99 per month. Hit the join button. Okay, so first question is from The Mind Is All, which I'm not actually going to answer. I'll tell you why now. Hey Lee, I was wondering if you could do a video on Azazel, or if you would know any good books that contain information or lore about him. I'm going to add this to Demon of the Week, because it's, one of the demonic forces, demonic spirits. So I'm going to add that to there. And let's continue with the questions. All right, Max Blizzard. Next question is, how do I know my familiar? I've been obsessed with wolves most of my adult life, and that stems from being petrified of them as a child due to werewolf films. Now I can't get enough of them. I have 3 wolf tattoos, and I have wolves all over my house, either ornaments, pictures, etc. I've even met wolves and been on a walk with them. The best day of my life. Could my familiar be a wolf? It could, yeah, definitely could be. This differs from a familiar. It's my fetch beast is wolf, and so in other cultures we may call it a power animal. It's that one animal which is your own bestial nature, your own personal bestial nature. Usually what you would find is that an animal which you are particularly attracted to, that resonates with you mostly, and as you said, you were afraid of wolves, but now you can't get enough of them, so sort of overcoming that fear. In some cultures, the animal that comes along and attacks you, but you still, you live through the experience, that usually becomes your power animal. There's a whole load of different ways you can experience this or get to know what your power animal is. When we're talking about familiar, your familiar doesn't necessarily need to be an animal. It can actually be a figure, I'm going to say person. It's not really a person, but it's a spirit. But it can be in humanoid form, not in always an animal form. A familiar can be a creation of your own, like a servitor. So familiar gets a bit broader in terminology, but I think what you're actually referring to here would be power animal, fetch beast. So yeah, reach out to Wolf and see if that is your own fetch beast. One way to do this, it's coming from core shamanism itself, which I think is probably a bit more accessible to the broader aspect of Western people, is to do a journey, do a shamanic journey, and call to your power animal, and just sit and wait for it to come. The usual indication in that sense is that it will approach you, or you will see it 3 times. So usually what happens is you may be, one of the approaches is to go down a river on a boat in the journey itself, and the animal that you sort of see animals on the banks of the river as you're going down, and the one that you see 3 times is then your power animal. Another approach is to just go on the journey and sit down and wait for the power animal to come and meet you. And the one that comes up approaches you 3 times is then your power animal. More physical approaches would be like an utiseta or sitting out, or vision quest. Those type of experiences where you go and you sit out in nature and you wait for an animal to come to you, physically come to you. So there's a lot of different ways you can approach this, a lot of different ways, and a lot of different cultures that have this aspect within their traditions. So the easiest is to just kind of try and find something that resonates with you and then go with that. But if you're feeling particularly attracted to Wolf, then reach out to Wolf and ask Wolf personally. I find it a very interesting experience when you work with your fetch beast, when you actually when you shapeshift into your fetch beast. I know when I did it with Wolf, and I was running through the forest, and my vision changed. I always thought, I've never really looked into what the vision of a wolf is. How they actually see things. I just assumed that they had extremely good vision. And when I was running through this forest as Wolf, everything was like, it was greys. There was no colour, but I did see colour. But I saw red, but it was like smoke, and it was leading to different scents within the forest. So I was actually seeing scents. And it was very interesting. It was incredibly interesting. And it confused me because, as I said, I kind of assumed that wolves have fantastic vision and they can see like amazingly well, better than we can, which would kind of indicate that how we see in color and 3 dimensions and everything else would be enhanced. But this seemed to be the reversed. But at the same time, it was better because I could actually see scents. I could see the smoke of the scent that I was trying to follow. But everything was grey. So when I came out of that, I went and researched and found out that that's how they see. Maybe not the actual seeing the red of the scent, but they see in grayscale. So that was quite interesting. So it's interesting to actually find out what your power animal is, or your fetch beast, and then go into an astral journey type thing and actually shapeshift into your power animal and experience how they see things, how they experience things. All right, so I think that covers that one anyway. All right, Sawyer Winters 916. Hi Lee. I live on my own and I am new to demonology. My ultra-religious parents visit me almost daily. They bless my home without my consent, force me to pray the rosary with them, force me to partake in the family Bible study, etc. Would the demons be upset if I were to contact them in my, unfortunately, very Catholic household? Would they refuse to work with me because of my parents' practice? I hope that makes sense. In other words, would I be able to call on Lucifer in one room while my parents sing hymns in another? Would that work? Sorry you've got such an unfortunate circumstance. If it's your home, you should be the one who controls what happens in your own home. But it's your parents, and sometimes that's not as easily, or it's easier said than done, let's put it that way. All right, so would they be offended? I would think not. I think when it comes to the spirits, I know we relate the demons and such things a lot to religious aspects, but I think they are kind of beyond that personally. We're talking about ancient gods and goddesses who were worshipped thousands and thousands of years ago, and over thousands of years. And during those millennia, things have changed, things have shifted, religions have come, religions have gone. Religions have started and they've developed and become something completely different to what they originally were. So, these ancient beings have seen all of these things happen. So I think when we're working with them, I personally think they're a little bit beyond, that pettiness of, we have a Catholic person that's praying, forcing me to do these prayers and things. Therefore, the spirit would be offended by this act. I don't think that's the case at all. So no, I don't. They definitely wouldn't be offended. In my personal opinion, of course, I don't think they would be offended. And I think yes, you can call Lucifer. But I think when it comes to Lucifer, especially, Lucifer's a light bringer. So I definitely don't think Lucifer would be offended by any kind of Catholic rituals, whether it is Bible study or whether it is praying with the Rosary. In fact, if you are being forced to pray with the Rosary and you're not actually verbally saying whatever it is, whatever prayers they're chanting they're doing. If you are doing it mentally, then while they're doing their thing, you can always just, pray the Rosary with Lucifer's end. I don't see why not. It's your home. It's your faith. It's your religion. It's your following. It's your tradition. Your parents have their own. And if you don't want to follow that, that's your own personal choice. But as I said, unfortunately, when it comes to family, things can get very difficult. And you quite often don't want to rock the boat, especially in those regards. And especially if you have an ultra religious family, that can get very difficult. But, I think, personally, I think your parents should respect your own space a little bit more than they are. But that's not my place to actually say anyway. All right, so let's go on to, let's see if I can get back. There we go. Okay, Lirak 666. If you could conduct an annual dedicated rite in honor, perhaps a devotional festival to Belial in the Southern Hemisphere, which dates, seasonal periods would you suggest? Purpose is to find a time most aligned with Belial besides merely midwinter or for winter's sake. I definitely think, this largely in regards to Connolly's work and Connolly's traditional demonolatry. I definitely think that Belial is associated with the Winter Solstice. In the Southern Hemisphere, that's in June. It's not in December. It is in June. So, even in paganism, as we would take the Sabbats and we would switch them. So, Samhain and Beltane get switched because the seasons are 6 months behind or 6 months ahead, depending on which way you're going. The same thing happens with this. We're working with the seasons in this regard, and therefore the winter solstice is in June. And Belial is definitely associated with the winter solstice in demonolatry, because Belial is associated with the direction of Earth. And if you are doing this in a circle, you're calling the 5 elemental kings into a circle, then let me just get my directions right. In the northern hemisphere, you would be doing that in the north with Belial and Earth. In the southern hemisphere, you're going to be doing that in the south with Belial and Earth. Okay, so you're even switching those directions because it's the direction of the sun, the movement of the sun. And in the northern hemisphere, the sun goes from east to south to west to north. In the southern hemisphere, it goes from east to north to west to south. So, if you're following the direction of the sun within your circle casting, then in the southern hemisphere, Belial would be in the south. Okay, just make sure you did say southern hemisphere. I'm not talking a load of shit. In the southern hemisphere. So I think this is where things get a bit confusing, because what you may have been considering is that in the books of Connolly, where it states that Belial is associated with Winter Solstice, and that's written in the northern hemisphere perspective. Therefore, what do we do in the southern hemisphere? Same thing. Belial is still associated with the Winter Solstice, but it's just that the dates change. So it switches by 6 months. So instead of Belial being celebrated in December, Belial would be celebrated in June. Okay, really as simple as that. And I did comment, I did reply to this comment in relation to Belial being the elemental king of earth. One interesting thing that Connolly notes is that Belial is smaller than the other elemental kings, which is very interesting when we think of this in relation to the elemental kings in terms of ceremonial magic, and Paracelsus, Eliphas Levi, etc., in terms of Peralda, Jin, Nixa, and Gob, the 4 elemental kings. Gob, the elemental king of earth, is the king of the gnomes. Now, gnomes are usually seen as being shorter than the other spirits. Sylphs, for instance, could be very tall, but they could also be very small. But, in relation to the others, if we think of gnomes, we think of these smaller beings which work in the earth. This is in relation to a lot of different races besides just gnomes. I mean, it includes fairies, it includes house spirits, brownies, etc., etc., etc. But King Gob is said to be the king of the earth and the king of the gnomes. So, in relation to size and what Connolly has interpreted as Belial being smaller than the other elemental kings, and King Gob being smaller than the other elemental kings in terms of Gob being the king of the gnomes, that relation gets quite interesting. So definitely Earth, and the direction of Earth, and what we find here is that as we are following the direction of the sun in the circle, we can also follow the direction of the seasons. So starting from east, you're working in the southern hemisphere like I am, therefore we would go from east to north to west to south. That's the direction that the sun follows. Okay, so we would go from morning in the east to midday in the north, evening or sunset in the west, and then midnight in the south. And midnight is where we place Earth. If we do it seasonally, relating to the solstices and equinoxes, we have the spring equinox in the east. In the north, you would then, working in the southern hemisphere, you would then have the midsummer solstice. In the west would then be the autumn equinox, and then in the south would be the winter solstice. So if you're relating that flow of natural energy, the flow of the sun, the flow of the seasons, the cycles that we go through on a daily basis and also an annual basis, then that position of Earth in the south, where Belial, we find Belial or King Gob, the king of the element of Earth, then we're looking at winter solstice. And that's why I would stick to relating Belial to winter solstice. But it's just that it's in June, not December. Okay, very long answer to that, but I hope that made sense. All right, I'm going to leave the questions there because I only have 4 more, which I'm going to cover next week, probably. So please send me more questions if we want to keep this Ask Lee segment going. I'll put your questions in the comments and I'll get to them. All right, so I hope you have a fantastic week and I'll see you soon. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.